Emma didn't just steal my art, she stole my name. Right there in the middle of the gallery, under blinding lights and clinking champagne glasses, she raised her glass and declared, "I own Lily's work. She gets nothing." And the buyers, they cheered. I was 27. My heart pounded like it might break through my chest, but I smiled. Because the worst part? It wasn't Emma's betrayal that cut deepest. It was when Mom, my own mother, the one who told me art was a waste of time, stepped up next to her and whispered, "Emma's right. You've always been a dreamer, Lily, and dreamers don't survive." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just being robbed, I was being erased. But here's what they didn't expect. Sometimes the girl they called a pawn is the one who flips the board. The lights were too bright, the room too silent. But my voice? It was finally loud enough. And if this beginning is already punching you in the chest, drop a comment. I feel her. Funny how betrayal looks so elegant under gallery lights. 3 weeks earlier, the rain was clawing at my bedroom window in Savannah when the call came in. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that the thought of them betraying you never once crossed your mind? That's where my story begins. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, in an old wooden house that carried the smell of jasmine through every summer. The porch creaked beneath my bare feet. Cicadas sang from the trees, and the thick southern air always held a mix of sweetness and heaviness, as if memory itself clung to it. In the yard stood an oak tree so wide its branches felt like they could hold up the sky. That tree was my sanctuary, the place where my childhood dreams were painted into existence, stroke by stroke. And beside me always was Emma, my older sister, my protector, my hero. Emma was 5 years older, already bold and full of ambition when I was still stumbling through adolescence. She wanted to be a journalist, someone who hunted down the truth with words sharp as steel. I, on the other hand, lived for color, the way sunlight broke into gold across the wooden porch, how the rain left silver streaks on glass, how shadows deepened into purple at dusk. I was the dreamer, the girl with a brush always dripping paint, and Emma was the one who made me believe those dreams mattered. When Mom raised her voice, when her words sliced into me like cold air, it was Emma who stood between us, shielding me like a wall I could always lean on. Mom was an accountant, precise and unyielding. Her world was built on balance sheets and neat columns of numbers. She could calculate anything, except the value of a dream. "Stop daydreaming, Lily," she would say, her voice sharp, her eyes never leaving the calculator in her hand. "Art won't pay your bills." I still hear the click of her pen against the table, the sigh of disapproval that always seemed louder than her words. To her, ambition looked like Emma chasing deadlines, not me chasing colors across a canvas. And every time her coldness sank into my bones, Emma would push back with laughter, loud, mischievous, unafraid. She'd grab one of my brushes, drag a streak of blue or red across the canvas, and grin at me. "See? It's beautiful. Don't stop, Lily." And I didn't, because when Emma believed in me, I believed in myself. There's one memory that still glows as vividly as fresh paint. A summer afternoon under that oak tree, the air so thick with heat the cicadas seemed to scream it out. I was cross-legged in the grass, hunched over a canvas, my jar of rinse water already cloudy from overused brushes. Emma lay sprawled beside me, her notebook open on her lap, scribbling with furious energy. Her pen scratched against the paper like it was chasing secrets. I leaned closer, curious, and asked, "What are you writing?" Without looking up, she said, "Truth. Always the truth." Then she tilted her head, eyes gleaming with a secret, and whispered, "Don't tell Mom. She thinks truth is numbers and receipts, but you and I, we know better, right?" She gave me that conspiratorial smile, the kind that pulled me into her orbit, made me feel like we belonged to the same hidden world. In that moment, I knew there was nothing she could say that I wouldn't follow. Maybe that's why, years later, I didn't stop to question it when the call came. It was raining in Savannah, the kind of rain that doesn't just fall but claws at the windows like it wants in. I was 27, still painting in the same room I'd grown up in, canvases stacked high against the walls, each one carrying pieces of my stubborn hope. The smell of wet jasmine drifted through the cracked window, mingling with the earthy scent of old wood. My phone buzzed, the glow of Emma's name lighting up the screen. My heart lifted automatically. No matter how busy life had gotten, no matter how much distance time carved between us, when Emma called, I answered. Her voice burst through the line, excited, rushed, too sharp around the edges. "Lily, I've got something huge. There's an exhibition in New Orleans. Big sponsors, serious buyers. Your art's gonna steal the show." She didn't even pause for me to breathe before adding, "Mom's behind this too. It's all set. You just have to come." Her words tumbled like water down a cliff, fast, relentless, hard to catch. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the raindrops racing down the glass, watching the streetlights blur into smeared streaks of gold and gray. Something about her voice didn't sound like the Emma I knew. It sounded desperate. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Wait, Mom's behind this?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. It didn't make sense. Mom had never once supported my art, not openly, not with her words. But Emma laughed, quick and breathless, almost cutting off my doubt. "Trust me, Lil. Pack your best work. This is your moment." And then, just like that, the call ended. No space for questions. No room for hesitation. The house fell quiet except for the rain hammering against the wooden panes, a steady rhythm that made the silence feel heavier. My paintbrush slipped from my hand, landing against the floor with a soft splatter, leaving a dark streak across the wood. I stared at it for a long time, listening to the storm outside and the storm brewing in my chest. Something wasn't right. Emma's voice had been too quick, too urgent. But when your hero calls, when the sister who once stood between you and every harsh word tells you to leap, you don't weigh the fall. You just leap. I told myself I was ready. Ready to prove Mom wrong, ready to show the world what Emma had always told me I could be. I closed my eyes and imagined it, the gallery lights catching the deep reds of my canvases, the blues shimmering like water under glass. For a heartbeat, hope swelled inside me, strong enough to drown out the unease curling at the edges of my thoughts. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't betray. At least, that's what I believed. I thought family was everything, a shield against the world. That night, I pulled out 10 of my favorite paintings and laid them across the floor. Each one felt like I was laying down pieces of myself, each brushstroke a heartbeat. The storm outside eased into a soft drizzle, and through the open window drifted the sharp sweetness of rain-soaked jasmine. I pressed my palms against the old desk, feeling the grooves worn deep into the wood, grounding myself in something familiar. And yet, in the back of my mind, Emma's voice replayed on a loop, bright, rushed, almost frantic. I couldn't shake it. Why did she sound so desperate? Hit like if you've ever chased a big dream. Share your story in the comments. The storm hadn't let up since Emma's call. Rain streaked across the old window panes in Savannah, every drop rattling like a warning I tried to ignore. I stood in my bedroom surrounded by canvases stacked against the walls, their painted faces watching me like silent witnesses. The air smelled of damp wood and jasmine, sharp and clinging, as I began pulling my paintings out one by one. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the rush of adrenaline pulsing through me. This was it, my chance. Emma said my art was going to shine, that Mom of all people, was backing me. I wanted to believe it, so I did. I wrapped each canvas carefully, sliding them into old sheets and taping the corners tight. Every fold felt like sealing away a piece of myself. 10 paintings, 10 pieces of my soul. The floorboards creaked under my weight as I lifted the bundle, heavier than it should have been. Or maybe I was just carrying more than paint and canvas. Maybe I was carrying hope, and the sting of every memory where Mom had called me a dreamer as if it were an insult. The rain pattered harder on the roof, and I caught myself whispering, "Don't ruin this, Emma. Please don't ruin this." My own voice startled me. I hadn't realized how much I was depending on her. But when the bus pulled into the station that night, headlamps cutting through the sheets of rain, I tightened my grip on my bag and stepped forward. The Greyhound bus smelled faintly of gasoline, damp coats, and too much coffee. I slid into a seat by the window, hugging my bundle of canvases like it might vanish if I let go. The storm followed us out of Savannah, lightning splitting the sky in crooked white veins. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass and tried to picture New Orleans the way Emma had described it years ago, vivid, wild, alive with jazz and light. My chest rose and fell too quickly. Was I nervous, excited, or both tangled together? Something's off, I thought, watching raindrops race each other down the window. But this is my shot. Hours blurred by in a lull of engine hum and muted conversations. When the bus finally rolled into New Orleans, the city greeted me with humidity thick as syrup and streets that glistened under neon signs. Music drifted faintly from somewhere, a saxophone bending a note that hung in the wet air. I clutched my paintings tighter as I stepped off, the night swallowing me with its noise and promise. Emma had told me to meet her at a cafe just a few blocks away. My shoes slapped against the wet pavement, and when I spotted the flickering neon sign of a coffee cup, I pushed the door open, the bell above tinkling weakly. Inside, the cafe smelled of burnt espresso and old grease. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, casting a pale glow over cracked vinyl booths. And there she was, Emma, my sister, my anchor, the one who'd once defended me with nothing but a laugh. She sat tucked into a corner booth, her shoulders hunched, her phone clutched in both hands like a lifeline. "Emma," I said softly. Relief poured through me, but unease quickly followed when she didn't look up right away. She finally met my eyes, her smile quick and practiced. "Lily, you made it." I slid into the booth across from her, the leather squeaking under me. Her eyes darted to the window, then back to her phone, then briefly to me, as if she couldn't hold my gaze for more than a second. I studied her, dark hair pulled back too tightly, circles under her eyes she'd tried to hide with makeup. Something gnawed at me. "Emma?" I asked, lowering my voice. "What did you mean about Mom's trouble?" She froze, her fingers tightening around the phone until her knuckles whitened. Then she waved a hand quickly, too quickly, brushing off the question. "It's nothing. Work stress. Don't worry about it. What matters is you're here, and your art is going to be the centerpiece." Her words came out polished, but her eyes slid away again, fixing on the menu board she clearly wasn't reading. My stomach twisted. I leaned forward. "Emma, if something's going on with Mom—" She cut me off, her tone sharp, almost brittle. "Mom's behind this too. That's all you need to know." She forced a smile then, but it didn't reach her eyes. The air between us thickened. The hiss of the espresso machine filled the silence, the hiss stretching longer than it should. I wrapped my hands around the chipped mug of coffee the waitress had placed in front of me, its heat anchoring me as doubt curled tighter inside. Emma's phone buzzed again, and she snatched it up, her thumb moving fast across the screen. She didn't look at me when she said, "It's all set, Lily, just trust me." Trust. That word again. The word I'd built my entire belief in her on. I sipped the bitter coffee, my eyes locked on her. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. The neon sign outside sputtered, throwing flashes of red and white light across Emma's face. She looked pale, shadowed, like someone I almost didn't recognize. My chest tightened. Why was she hiding something? And what did Mom's trouble have to do with me? The city outside pulsed with music and rain, alive with energy, but inside that dingy cafe, all I felt was a growing unease, the kind that wraps around you slowly like a snake tightening. What was Emma hiding? New Orleans felt like stepping into another world. The moment I set foot on Bourbon Street, the city wrapped itself around me, humid, loud, impossible to ignore. The air smelled of fried food, spilled beer, and cigarette smoke, all layered beneath something sweeter, like magnolia drifting faintly on the night breeze. The streets glistened from the earlier rain, every puddle catching shards of neon light that blinked and shimmered in a restless rhythm. Music spilled from every doorway, jazz horns clashing with blues guitars, laughter bursting like fireworks. For a moment, I almost forgot why I was there. Emma walked fast, her heels clicking sharp against the wet pavement, her phone glowing in her hand. Every few steps, her eyes darted to the screen, her thumbs flying across it. I tried to keep pace, clutching my bundle of paintings tight against me. "Emma," I said over the din of a trumpet and a man shouting for tourists to come inside his bar. "Can you just tell me what this exhibition is about? Who's behind it? What's really going on?" She shot me a glance, gave a small laugh that didn't sound real, and squeezed my arm briefly before pulling away again. "Don't worry, Lily. Trust me. You'll see." Her smile vanished almost as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the glow of her phone. I wanted to push, but the city swallowed my words. Instead, I followed her as Bourbon Street narrowed, the chaos giving way to something quieter. The neon faded, replaced by a sleek facade of glass and steel. The gallery stood like a jewel box against the rough edges of the street, polished, pristine, gleaming under carefully placed lights. I tightened my grip on my canvases. This was it. Inside, the gallery air was cool and dry, smelling faintly of varnish and something metallic. The floors gleamed so perfectly that every step I took echoed back at me, my sneakers squeaking embarrassingly loud. The walls were bare, blank canvases themselves, waiting for art to give them a voice. Emma guided me toward a tall man standing at the center of the room. His presence was immediate, like he owned not just the gallery, but the air around it. "Lily," Emma said, her voice brighter than I'd heard all day. "This is Julian Cross. He's the sponsor I told you about." Julian turned slowly, his gaze sweeping over me with practiced ease. His suit was cut razor sharp, his tie knotted perfectly. His smile was polite, but it didn't warm his eyes, which seemed to size me up like I was a number on a page. He extended his hand, cool and firm, though the shake was so brief it felt like a formality. "So," he said, glancing down at the canvases clutched in my arms, "these are the pieces Emma has been raving about?" "Yes," I whispered, my throat dry. "They're my best work." He tilted his head, studying me as though I were part of the artwork he was judging. Then, with the faintest shrug, he said, "We'll see. If the exhibition succeeds, I'll consider making an offer. If not, well, art without buyers is just clutter." The word clutter hit like a slap. My chest burned, but before I could respond, he snapped his fingers as if directing a stagehand instead of speaking to an artist. "Make it marketable. That's all that matters." I clenched my jaw, willing my voice not to tremble. Inside, anger flared, but I swallowed it down. Emma looped her arm lightly through mine, her whisper brushing my ear. "Don't let him get under your skin. He's the one with the checkbook." But she didn't meet my eyes when she said it, and that hurt almost as much as his words. Julian excused himself a moment later, already moving toward a phone call waiting by the far wall. Emma leaned against a pedestal, scrolling her phone again. I stared at the empty white walls around us, imagining my paintings filling them. Maybe Julian was cold, maybe Emma was distant, but this gallery, it was a chance, and I wasn't about to waste it. That night, long after Julian left and Emma disappeared with some vague excuse, I stayed behind in the quiet gallery. The city outside still roared, but here, silence pressed against me. I unwrapped my canvases slowly, lining them one by one against the walls. Each painting felt heavier than the last, as if setting them down was laying pieces of myself bare in a place that didn't belong to me yet. My hands trembled as I adjusted the frames, stepping back, tilting my head, adjusting again. But one canvas remained blank, leaning in the corner, almost taunting me. I sat cross-legged on the polished floor, my sketchbook balanced on my knees. My pencil scratched across the paper before I even knew what I was drawing. Jagged strokes, dripping lines, fractured shapes. Shadows seemed to pour from my hand. My chest tightened as if the sketch were dragging something from deep inside me. And then it became clear. Betrayal. That was what I was sketching, though I couldn't yet name why. Emma's hurried voice from the phone call, Julian's dismissive tone, Mom's years of coldness, they blurred together until the only thing that made sense was this raw, unsettling image. I stared at it, my breath shallow. It was ugly, messy, but it was truth, my truth. Hours slipped by unnoticed until the gallery lights dimmed automatically, casting the room in soft shadows. I packed away my sketchbook, smudges of graphite staining my fingers. The city outside throbbed with noise, a different wave of music and laughter rising with the late hour. I pushed open the gallery door and stepped into the night air, sticky and alive, and that's when I felt it. Eyes on me. I froze, clutching my sketchbook tight. Across the street, under a leaning lamppost, stood a man. His figure was tall, motionless, his face hidden in shadow. The streetlight behind him made his outline sharp, but the details were swallowed by darkness. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched. My pulse hammered in my ears. I stood rooted to the spot, the humid air pressing against me like a hand on my chest. For a long moment, neither of us moved. A car sped by, splashing water across the curb. I blinked, and when I looked again, the man was gone. The lamppost stood empty, the street quiet, as if he'd never been there. My fingers ached from clutching my sketch so tightly. I glanced back at the gallery, then down the street where Emma had vanished hours before. Where did she go at night? Why was she so evasive? And who was that stranger, watching me from the shadows? The city pulsed with music and laughter, but all I felt was suspicion curling like smoke inside me. This feels bigger than an exhibition. Who's watching me? The apartment had turned into a workshop of chaos. A week before the exhibition, every surface was buried. Canvases leaned precariously against the walls. Half-squeezed paint tubes bled into one another on the floor, and receipts and coffee cups stacked high enough to topple with a breath. The scent of turpentine clung to everything, sharp and bitter, seeping into my hair, my skin. The ceiling fan spun lazily, its blades clicking faintly, stirring warm air that did nothing to lift the heaviness pressing down on me. Emma's laptop sat on the edge of the table, its glow cutting through the dim room. She had gone to shower, steam already fogging the bathroom door, and her phone lay face down on the couch. I told myself not to look. I even said it aloud, whispering into the messy air, "Don't do it, Lily. Just leave it alone." But my feet moved anyway. I leaned over the desk, heart hammering so loudly I thought it might give me away. The cursor blinked inside an email already open. The subject was plain, almost boring. Update. My eyes skimmed the first line, then stopped cold. Plans on track. Lily suspects nothing. The message was signed to Mom. The words lodged in my chest, each syllable striking harder than the last. I felt heat rising to my cheeks, though the rest of my body went ice cold. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling, wanting to dig deeper, to click through every folder, but fear rooted me in place. The shower hissed in the next room, a cruel reminder that any second Emma could appear. When she finally did, stepping out with damp hair clinging to her face and towel wrapped tight around her, I couldn't hold it in. My voice cracked before the words even formed. "Emma, what is this email? What plan?" Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp at first, then softening into something more practiced, almost theatrical. She crossed the room quickly, snapped the laptop shut, and tossed her towel onto a chair in one seamless motion. "It's just work, Lily," she said, her tone clipped. "Work?" My voice rose, hands shaking. "Since when do you and Mom make secret plans about me?" She leaned closer, her hair dripping onto the floor, her expression stiff. "Drop it. You wouldn't understand." Then, as if to end it, she forced a smile, thin, brittle, unconvincing. "Focus on your paintings. That's what matters." The conversation ended there, but the storm inside me didn't. I tried to paint that afternoon, dragging brushes across canvas, but every stroke felt heavier, wrong. The brush handle dug into my palm, paint bleeding into shapes I didn't recognize. The next day, Julian swept into the gallery like he owned the place. His shoes clicked sharply against the polished floor, the sound echoing in the sterile air. He moved with the precision of someone who didn't waste time, scanning my work as if searching for evidence of failure. He stopped in front of one of my most personal pieces, deep indigo layers clawing against jagged streaks of crimson. It had taken me weeks, every ounce of myself poured into it. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing, then delivered his judgment like a verdict. "Too dark," he said. "Lighten it. Bright cells. Pain doesn't." The words stung. "But this is my vision," I whispered, hugging my arms against my chest. "It's not supposed to be light. It's supposed to—" His gaze cut me off, colder than steel. "Vision doesn't matter if no one buys it. Make it marketable." Marketable. The word landed like a knife. I bit the inside of my cheek until the metallic tang of blood filled my mouth, holding back the words I wanted to spit at him. He was the one with the checkbook. He knew it, and Emma had said as much. That evening I returned to the apartment, my shoulders aching from carrying canvases that suddenly felt like burdens. Emma wasn't there. Her shoes were gone, her phone too, leaving the place eerily empty. I set the canvases down and sank into the chair by the window, staring out at the city's glow. Neon lights bled into the night air, smearing color across the wet pavement. I told myself she was working, securing something for the show, but the pit in my stomach only deepened. Then I saw him again. Across the street, under the leaning lamppost, the stranger stood. His silhouette was unmistakable, tall, rigid, motionless. He didn't fidget, didn't shift. He simply watched. The lamplight threw his outline into sharp relief, but his face remained hidden, swallowed by shadow. My breath hitched, fingers clenching the curtain until the fabric wrinkled. My chest rose and fell too quickly, panic pricking my skin. He didn't move, not even when headlights swept across him. For the briefest instant, I thought I caught the glint of his eyes, but then the car passed and he was gone. I staggered back from the window, my back hitting the wall. Sliding down until I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, I whispered into the emptiness, "Why is he watching me? Who is he?" That night, sleep dragged me into a dream so vivid it left me shaking. I was in the gallery, walls lined with my paintings. The air smelled of paint and dust, but something sour lingered underneath. When I turned toward the sketch of my betrayal piece, the lines I had drawn weren't static anymore. They bled. The colors, dark and jagged, dripped into thick streams of red. It ran down the canvas, splattering onto the pristine floor, pooling at my feet. I stepped back, but the red spread faster, seeping into my shoes, climbing up my hands. No matter how I tried to wipe them clean, the color clung, sticky and endless. I gasped awake, drenched in sweat, the taste of iron sharp on my tongue. My paintings loomed in the shadows, their shapes warped by the faint glow of the streetlights outside. My chest heaved, every inhale tight, every exhale ragged. "Am I just a pawn in their game?" I whispered into the dark, the sound of my own voice trembling. Outside, the city carried on, its laughter and jazz pouring through the night, but inside me, dread coiled tighter. The email, Emma's dismissal, Julian's cold command, the man in the shadows, and that dream dripping with blood. None of it felt like coincidence. What are they planning? The night before the exhibition, the apartment felt like it was holding its breath. Every sound seemed amplified, the faint tick of the clock on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator, the drip-drip of a leaky faucet in the kitchen. I sat in the living room surrounded by the remnants of preparation, half-cleaned brushes, canvases leaning against one another like exhausted soldiers, coffee mugs staining the table. The smell of turpentine and old espresso hung thick, pressing down on me until my chest ached. Emma had gone out again, leaving no explanation, no promise of return. Just the slam of the door and silence. My mind wouldn't stop circling that email I'd seen on her laptop days before. Plans on track. Lily suspects nothing. The words replayed in my head like a curse. Something inside me whispered that the answer I dreaded was behind her door. I stood, my legs stiff, my heart hammering as I crossed the cluttered floor. Every creak of the wood sounded like a scream. I paused at her bedroom door, my hand trembling on the knob, whispering to myself, "Just look, you need to know." Slowly I turned it. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, floral and sharp, mixed with the sterile tang of printer ink. The curtains were half drawn, cutting stripes of streetlight across the floorboards. Papers cluttered her desk, but one stack lay too neat, too deliberate. My breath quickened as I reached for it, my fingers brushing the edge of the top sheet. A contract. At first it looked ordinary, like any gallery document. My name appeared bold across the page, and my signature curled neatly at the bottom. But I hadn't signed it. My pulse roared in my ears as I read. My paintings, every one of them, were being sold for almost nothing. And not to elevate me, not to give me exposure. They were collateral, bargaining chips in some journalism deal Emma had brokered with Julian. My art, reduced to currency for her career. The page crumpled in my hands before I even realized I was crushing it. My knees weakened, heat burning up my neck while my insides froze. She sold me, my own sister. The front door creaked open. Emma. I barely had time to shove the contract to my chest before she stepped inside. Her hair was damp from rain, her eyes narrowing the second she saw the paper in my hands. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Then she smiled, tight, annoyed, not apologetic. "You were snooping." I stepped forward, my voice breaking with fury and disbelief. You sold my work? For your career? Her chin lifted, her face hard. You don't get how the world works, Lily. The words hit harder than any slap. My throat burned, tears stinging my eyes, but anger pushed through the pain. You forged my name. You lied to me. You dragged me here like I mattered, and all along you were selling me out? Her eyes flicked away, just for a moment, but when they returned to mine, they were cold, unyielding. Grow up. This is business. You paint. I negotiate. That's how we both win. No, I whispered, shaking. That's how you win, and I lose everything. Her silence sealed it. The sister who once defended me, who laughed with me under the oak tree in Savannah, was gone. In her place stood a stranger willing to erase me for her ambition. I stormed out, my breath ragged, the contract still clutched in my fist. The night air outside slapped against my face, damp and heavy with rain. Neon signs blurred as I walked, my vision swimming with tears. My chest felt hollow, caved in, but anger drove me forward until my feet carried me back to the gallery. The main lights were off, but a soft glow came from the small office. I slipped inside, my shoes squeaking faintly against the floor. The office smelled of paper, dust, and burnt coffee. And there, leaning against a desk stacked high with folders, was Mia. You look like hell, she said, her tone flat but not unkind. I held out the crumpled contract with trembling hands. My voice cracked. Emma, she forged this. She's selling my work. She's using me. Mia took the paper, scanning it quickly before letting it fall back onto the desk. Her jaw tightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. I'm not surprised. Julian's been pulling this stunt for years. He finds artists like you, hungry, hopeful, and bleeds them dry. Emma's just feeding the machine. The words stung, but they also lit something inside me. My hands gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles whitening. So it was never about my art, not to them. It was about their deal. Mia's gaze met mine, steady, unwavering. You can let them take it or you can fight, but you need to decide now. The room hummed with silence, broken only by the buzz of the desk lamp. I could hear laughter faintly from the street outside, jazz horns blaring in the distance, the city alive and careless. Inside me, everything shifted. I looked down at the contract again, my name scrawled across it in a hand that wasn't mine. My art turned into cheap currency. My chest ached, but beneath the ache was fire. My own sister betrayed me, I said quietly, each word steadying me. Then louder, but I won't let her win. The office seemed to close in, the stacks of paper, the dust, the lamp buzzing like a warning. Somewhere outside, the city kept moving, unaware that in this small, cluttered office, a battle line had been drawn. Shock still rattled me, but under it, determination took root. Can I outsmart them? The night of the exhibition wrapped around me like a storm waiting to break. The gallery glowed under harsh white lights, its walls pristine and expectant, the air saturated with the mix of expensive perfume, sharp varnish, and the faint metallic tang of wine being poured into glass after glass. Conversations layered over one another like restless waves, snatches of laughter, sharp critiques disguised as compliments, the rustle of silk dresses brushing against tailored suits. Every sound, every glance pressed against my chest until I could barely breathe. I lingered outside the main hall, deliberately late, the wooden floor creaking beneath my shoes as if scolding me for hesitating. My fingers tightened around the edge of the draped canvas, slick with sweat. Emma thought she had me trapped, bound by her forged contract and her poisonous promises, but tonight I wasn't following her plan. I had mine. The crowd rippled with curiosity when I pushed the canvas toward the center, their whispers stretching thin across the room. Emma spotted me instantly, her smile freezing mid-performance, the wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Julian's eyes followed, narrowing as though he could already sense rebellion in my movements. The spotlight above hummed, its glow sharp and unforgiving, waiting to reveal what I had hidden. I inhaled slowly, the scent of oil paint lingering faintly on the fabric. My hands shook as I seized the drape. For a split second, I imagined the floor swallowing me whole, sparing me from this choice, but then I yanked the cover away. Gasps split the air. The painting was violent in its honesty. Jagged strokes carved into the canvas, deep reds dripping downward, pooling like fresh blood. Black shadows clawed along the edges, the whole piece trembling with fury, even in stillness. It was my wound on display, my secret shouted in color. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Dozens of eyes drilled into me, some wide with shock, others narrowing in disapproval. I could hear a woman whisper to her companion, "It's grotesque," while another murmured, "No, it's raw. It's real." My throat burned, but I forced my words out, steadying each one. "This," I said, stepping forward, the spotlight pinning me, "is about trust destroyed, about love turned into betrayal, about the cost of lies." My gaze swept the room, lingering briefly on Emma's pale face and Julian's clenched jaw. A collective intake of breath shivered through the audience, followed by a chaotic wave of murmurs. Phones lifted discreetly, flashes sparking like lightning. The room had become a battlefield, and my painting the weapon. Julian moved first. His perfect smile shattered, replaced by something ugly and exposed. He slammed his glass onto the nearest table, shards skittering across the polished floor. The sharp crack silenced the whispers. "This," he spat, his voice cutting through the room, "is a disgrace. Art like this doesn't sell. You've turned my investment into a spectacle." His eyes, blazing with betrayal of his own, darted toward Emma. "You promised me control." And then he was gone, storming out so fast the doors rattled against their hinges, leaving a vacuum behind him. Emma's heels struck the floor like gunshots as she rushed toward me, her carefully curated charm crumbling. She leaned close, her voice a venomous hiss. "What are you doing? You're ruining everything." I trembled, every nerve raw, but the paintbrush in my grip anchored me firm and solid. My voice quavered, then steadied. "No, Emma, you ruined everything when you sold me out." Her eyes flared, her jaw clamped tight, and for the first time I saw it, the fear hiding beneath her fury. She reached for my arm, desperate, but I stepped back, raising the brush between us like a barrier. The crowd smelled blood, pressing closer, murmuring louder, eager for spectacle. I turned back to them, lifting my chin. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying over the storm of whispers, "this exhibition isn't about power or money or manipulation. It's about truth, and sometimes truth bleeds." I gestured to the canvas, the thick red paint glistening under the heat of the lights, looking alive, almost moving. "This is my truth." For a moment, no one moved. Then applause broke out from a corner, hesitant, quickly swallowed by louder murmurs of disapproval. Some clapped, some sneered, some recorded every second with greedy fascination. The gallery, once polished and pristine, had fractured into chaos. Emma spun in frantic circles, her composure gone, her reputation unraveling in real time. She tried to soothe patrons, reaching for them with trembling hands, but they pulled away, whispering behind raised glasses. Without Julian, she was exposed. Her empire of lies collapsed, and I watched it crumble around her. And in that ruin, I stood taller. The fear that had stalked me for weeks peeled away, layer by layer, replaced by something fierce and unyielding. My chest heaved with adrenaline, but my spine straightened, my grip on the brush so tight it left dents in my skin. I could feel every betrayal pressed against me. But then, as I stood in defiance, the weight shifted. My painting had absorbed it, bled it out for the world to see. The event, her grand moment, was collapsing, but I wasn't the one falling. I should have felt pity. I didn't. I felt release. Inside me, a single thought surged, steady as a drumbeat. I'm taking back what's mine, no matter the cost. The crowd parted as I stepped away from the spotlight, their whispers trailing after me. Some eyes burned with judgment, others with awe, but none of them mattered. What mattered was the fire in my chest, the power in my voice, the brush still clenched in my hand. Outside, the night air hit me like a baptism, cool, damp, alive with the pulse of Bourbon Street. Jazz spilled from open doors, wild and defiant, matching the rhythm in my veins. I tightened my grip on the brush, my knuckles white, my body buzzing as if the city itself had joined my fight. What's next for my fight? Subscribe to see how I fight back. Drop a comment about a time you stood your ground. The apartment was darker than usual, as if even the walls were exhausted by the chaos of the exhibition. The curtains sagged half shut, and the single lamp in the corner buzzed faintly, its weak light pooling across scattered canvases and paint-stained mugs. I sat hunched at the table, my Betrayal painting propped against the wall nearby. Its red strokes caught the glow, glistening like wounds that refused to close. Every time my eyes met the canvas, I felt the heat of my own fury ignite again. Mia sat across from me, her hair pulled into a messy knot, a pen tapping restlessly against the rim of her coffee cup. Her presence felt steady, grounding, though her voice carried its own weight of bitterness. She studied me for a moment, then leaned forward, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Emma screwed me over too," she said flatly. My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" She laughed once, short and humorless. "Years ago, she promised me a feature for her journalism project. Said she'd showcase my work, give me exposure. I gave her everything, my sketches, my words, even a draft of my artist's statement. She never published it. Instead, she twisted my story, made herself look like the hero who discovered struggling artists, and me? I was left invisible." Her eyes hardened, and for the first time, I felt a bond, not just sympathy, but solidarity. Betrayal had carved through both of us, shaping scars we now recognized in each other. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the lamp and the faint traffic outside. Finally, I whispered, "So it wasn't just me. She's always been like this." Mia's lips pressed thin. "Julian's her puppet master, but Emma, she's the one who knows how to twist the knife." Her words lingered like smoke in the room, seeping into my skin. My chest tightened, but this time not with fear, with anger sharpened into resolve. I wasn't alone anymore. The next night, Mia led me to a communal studio tucked above an old jazz bar. The wooden stairs creaked under our feet, and the smell of turpentine and tobacco clung to the air. Inside, paint-splattered floors stretched beneath dim, hanging bulbs, and voices mingled with the clink of bottles and the scrape of chairs. Local artists filled the space, faces young and weathered, eyes burning with the same bitterness I carried. "This is Lily," Mia announced, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder. "She knows what Julian's capable of." A tall man with streaks of paint across his arms snorted. "Capable of? The man's a thief. He parades us as talent, then sells our souls cheap to line his pockets." Another artist, a woman with silver rings stacked on her fingers, leaned forward. "He promised me a show once, said he'd market my work to collectors. Instead, he sold half my portfolio under someone else's name. I had to start over from scratch." Each story landed like a hammer against my chest, reinforcing what Mia had already told me. I wasn't fighting a single battle. I was stepping into a war that had been brewing for years. Their resentment, their pain, it mirrored mine. For the first time, I felt like my anger belonged somewhere bigger, something stronger. But that night, when I returned to the apartment, the air shifted again. My laptop glowed faintly on the table, screen still lit from Emma's carelessness. I shouldn't have looked, I told myself that. But the urge was too heavy, too suffocating to resist. The email was short, sterile, clinical, but the words carved straight into me. Signature forged, debt settled. Don't tell Lily, she suspects nothing. It wasn't Emma's email this time. It was Mom's. My throat tightened. I read it again and again, the words twisting like knives. Years ago, long before New Orleans, long before Emma's schemes, Mom had forged my name to cover gambling debts. My name, my identity. My art wasn't the first thing stolen. It was just the latest. I pressed my palms to the table, my breath shallow, my chest rising and falling too fast. "Mom's lies cut deeper than Emma's," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. Betrayal didn't just run in my sister, it flowed from the woman who raised us. How long had I been living in a house of lies? Mia appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. She had seen the email over my shoulder, her jaw tightening. "Lily," she said softly, "this goes higher than Emma. It's not just her game, it's your mother's too." The betrayal expanded in me, filling every hollow space until my whole body trembled. I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop against the wall, to tear down every canvas in the room. But instead I closed my eyes and gripped the edge of the table so hard my nails dug into the wood. Slowly I turned toward my painting. The red still glowed, deeper now, darker. Each stroke looked alive, bleeding anger and truth into the room. I saw myself in those strokes, not just broken but burning. "We're going to confront them," I said, my voice low but certain. "Emma, Mom, both of them." Mia nodded once, her expression unreadable but steady. "Then we plan. No more surprises. This time, you lead." The room fell silent again, save for the hum of the laptop cooling, its light still faintly illuminating the damning email. I stood taller, straighter, staring at the canvas as if it were my reflection. The fury hadn't broken me, it had sharpened me. Inside my head, one question clawed its way forward, relentless, echoing louder than the jazz outside, louder than my own heartbeat. How deep does Mom's betrayal go? The apartment smelled of cardboard and dust as I knelt on the floor, sliding canvases into worn boxes. My hands trembled as I wrapped each painting in scraps of newspaper, the ink smearing faintly against my skin. The betrayal still clung to me like smoke, but packing my work felt like reclaiming pieces of myself, my brushstrokes, my colors, my truth. Each canvas I slid into the box whispered back at me, "You're still here. You still matter." The door creaked and Mia slipped inside, carrying the scent of night air and cigarettes. Behind her trailed two of the local artists I'd met in the studio above the jazz bar. Their clothes were splattered with paint, their eyes restless but alive. Mia crouched beside me, her hand steadying one of the boxes. "You're not leaving these to rot in some storage closet," she said, her voice sharp but certain. "We've been talking. There's an art bar on Frenchman Street. Graffiti on the walls, music every night, no rules. They'll let us host an exhibition. Independent. Yours." I blinked at her, the tape roll still clutched in my hand. "Mine? After what happened, who would even come?" Mia's eyes flared, fierce and unflinching. "We know betrayal, Lily. That's why people will come. Your story is their story. Ours too." The tall painter from before leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed, the dried streaks of cobalt blue on his skin catching the light. "Julian can't own everything, not anymore." For the first time in weeks, something cracked open inside me, not fear, not dread, something lighter, a flicker of hope. We carried the boxes together down the narrow stairwell, the cardboard edges digging into my palms. The night outside was damp, heavy with the scent of rain-soaked pavement and the distant echo of trumpets. Frenchman Street pulsed with neon, laughter spilling out of open doorways, music winding through the air like smoke. The art bar rose ahead of us, its brick walls scrawled with layers of graffiti, colors piled on colors, messages scratched over old tags. It wasn't polished like the gallery, but it was alive. Inside, the room smelled of beer and acrylic paint. Strings of mismatched lights sagged overhead, glowing soft and imperfect. I set one of my canvases against the wall, its colors burning under the dim bulbs. For the first time, I felt like my work belonged somewhere, not curated, not twisted, not sold off, but seen. As we arranged the pieces, Mia nudged me. "You need to know something. People are talking about you. Online." She held up her phone and my breath caught. My painting, the betrayal piece, its dripping reds captured under the gallery spotlight, flashed across the screen. Videos of the exhibition collapse were everywhere, strangers' voices narrating, captions screaming, "Sister sells her out," "Artist fights back." Thousands of comments poured beneath, some angry, some inspired, some confessing their own betrayals. My chest tightened, my pulse quickening. People? They actually care? Mia smirked. They care enough to share, and that's power. That's when Clara appeared. She was younger than I expected, her curly hair tied back loosely, glasses slipping down her nose. She carried a notebook under one arm, her eyes sharp but kind. She introduced herself quickly, almost breathlessly. "I'm Clara. I've been covering Julian for months, but nobody wanted to talk. Your story, it's exactly what people need to hear. If you're ready, I can help expose him." Her words dropped into me like sparks catching dry tinder. A journalist, one who wasn't twisting stories for herself, but fighting to reveal the truth. I thought of Emma, of her cold smile, of her forged deals. And then I looked at Clara. her pen already poised, her focus steady. The contrast nearly broke me. Strangers were offering me the loyalty my own family never had. I swallowed hard, the weight of it pressing against my chest. Strangers are saving me where family failed. We stayed at the bar late, laughter and voices swelling around us. Artists sketched on napkins, musicians dragged in instruments, the walls seemed to vibrate with a rhythm of defiance. I let myself smile just a little as I watched my canvases lean proudly against graffiti-stained walls. For the first time in so long, I wasn't alone. But when I stepped outside for air, the chill of the night wrapped around me like a warning. The street was quieter now, puddles reflecting the fractured glow of neon signs. That's when I felt it, that prickle down my neck. He was there again, the stranger, half shrouded in shadow, his figure blurred against the lamppost. He didn't move, didn't step closer, just stood, watching. My breath caught, my body frozen for a heartbeat too long. Was he tied to Emma? To Julian? Or worse, was he tied to Mom? A car passed, spraying mist into the air, and when I blinked, he was gone. Vanished, like he had been carved out of the dark itself. I hugged my arms to my chest, the taste of iron sharp on my tongue. Even with allies around me, the mystery gnawed deeper. The betrayal wasn't finished. It was stretching, widening, pulling me towards something I hadn't yet seen. I turned back toward the bar, where the hum of music and voices promised warmth, solidarity, and hope. My painting waited inside, its reds glowing like coals refusing to die, but the question followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Who's the stranger working for? The apartment was dim, lit only by the glow of my laptop screen. Clara's article had gone live an hour ago, and it was already everywhere. My face, my painting, Emma's name, Julian's name, blown open, exposed for the world to see. Headlines screamed across social media. Art scam uncovered in New Orleans. Sister betrays sister. My phone buzzed nonstop, each vibration like a drumbeat rattling through my chest. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even triumphant. But the truth was heavier. Every comment, every share, every repost pushed me deeper into the spotlight. And with it, the weight of my family's betrayal pressed harder. I was scrolling through hundreds of messages, some supportive, some cruel, when my phone lit up with a name I dreaded. Emma. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, my breath shallow. Finally, I answered. Her voice tore through the line before I could even speak. "You destroyed my career!" she screamed, her words jagged, splintered with rage. In the background, I heard the faint slam of a door, glass breaking, footsteps pacing. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Julian's gone, the investors are gone, and everyone's laughing at me. At me, Lily!" I closed my eyes, pressing my palm against my forehead, trying to steady myself. "You did that to yourself, Emma. You forged my name. You sold me out." There was a pause, just a second, but in that silence, something shifted. Her breathing slowed, turned jagged, and then her voice came back colder. "You think I wanted this? You think I had a choice?" Her words stung, sharp with desperation. "You always had a choice," I said quietly. "No," she snapped, voice breaking. "Mom made me do it." My stomach dropped. The air in the room seemed to thin, the walls pressing closer. "What do you mean? Mom?" "She forced me into Julian's deal," Emma spat, her words spilling out too fast, too raw to be lies. "She's been drowning in gambling debts for years, Lily. You think I forged your signature because I wanted to? She made me. She's been forging your name since you were a teenager. Credit cards, loans, contracts, all of it. You were just the perfect cover, too innocent to suspect." My knees went weak, and I sank onto the edge of the couch, the phone slick in my hand. "Since I was a teen," my voice trembled, barely audible. "She's been using me all this time?" Emma laughed bitterly on the other end, the sound fractured. "Wake up, Lily. Mom's lies cut deeper than mine ever could. You think she cares about your art, your life? She only cares about money and how to gamble it away. You're not her daughter. You're her insurance policy." Tears blurred my vision, but anger burned hotter underneath. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because it's over for me," she hissed. "And soon, it'll be over for you too. Do you really think that man standing outside your window was coincidence? He's not mine. He's Mom's. He's a collector's enforcer. He's watching you because Mom owes more than she can pay and you're leverage. That's who he works for." My breath hitched, a shiver ripping down my spine. The stranger, the faceless shadow under the lamppost, the weight of his gaze every night. It wasn't paranoia. It was real, and it was tied to her, to Mom. I wanted to scream, to deny it, but the puzzle pieces slammed together too perfectly. The forged emails, the gambling debts, the stranger, all roads led back to her. "Emma," I whispered, my voice shaking with fury, "you chose to help her. You chose to sell me out." There was silence, and then Emma's voice dropped to a whisper, hollow and frayed. "I never had the strength to fight her, but maybe you do." The line went dead. I sat there, frozen, the buzz of the dial tone bleeding into silence. My chest rose and fell too fast, my hands gripping the phone until my knuckles whitened. Mom, my mother, the one person who was supposed to protect me, had been using me all along. "My own mother," I murmured into the stillness. "How could I not see it? How long has she been lying to me?" The room felt suffocating. I stood pacing, the floorboards groaning beneath my feet. My gaze caught on my betrayal painting, propped against the wall. The reds glowed even in the dim light, dripping like an open wound that would never heal. But now, the wound had a name. Mom. I pulled my coat tight around me, my body trembling but my mind sharpening into steel. I couldn't stay here, surrounded by whispers and shadows. I needed answers. No, more than answers. I needed confrontation. Within the hour, I was on a bus headed for Savannah, the city lights of New Orleans dissolving into the night behind me. The bus smelled faintly of gasoline and old leather, the hum of the engine steady beneath the low murmur of passengers. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching the dark highways stretch endlessly ahead. Every bump in the road rattled through me, every mile carrying me closer to the woman who had carved my life into pieces without me knowing. Betrayal from Emma had been a wound, but betrayal from Mom, it was poison. I clenched my fists in my lap, the reflection of my face in the glass pale, eyes burning. I wasn't the pawn anymore. Not Emma's, not Julian's, not Mom's. Inside my head, one thought pulsed steady and sharp. Mom's lies started years ago. How could I not see? I closed my eyes, the vibration of the bus rattling through me, and whispered into the dark, "What else has Mom hidden?" The bus ride into Savannah was long and heavy, each mile tightening the knot in my stomach. By the time I stepped off, the air clung humid and sticky to my skin, carrying the faint scent of salt from the coast and magnolia from the trees. Mom's house stood at the end of a cracked sidewalk, smaller than I remembered, almost shrinking into itself. The paint peeled in strips, shutters leaned unevenly, and the porch sagged with years of neglect. It wasn't just a house, it was a monument to everything that had broken between us. My hand gripped the contract in my pocket, the paper already wrinkled from how many times I had crushed it in my fist. The words blurred in my mind, but the forged signature, my name stolen, burned clear. My heart hammered against my ribs. I told myself no more excuses, no more running. The door creaked open, and there she was, my mother. She froze for half a second before pasting on that bright, too smooth smile. "Lily, what a surprise!" Her perfume hit me like a wall, sweet, sharp, desperate to cover the stale smell of cigarettes that seeped from inside. I stepped past her before she could invite me. The living room was dim, a single lamp casting yellow light over stacks of magazines, cluttered tables, and ashtrays filled to the brim. The ticking of a wall clock filled the silence, punctuated by the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Faded family photos stared down at me from the walls, faces of people who seemed happier, kinder, untouched by what came later. I pulled the contract from my pocket and held it tight, my voice already breaking as I asked, "When did you start forging my name for your debts?" Her smile cracked, her eyes flicking to the paper. "Honey," she said softly, "let's just sit down and talk." "No." My throat burned, and my hand shook as I raised the paper higher. "Answer me." Her lips pressed into a thin line, her shoulders straightening. "It was for the family," she muttered at last. "Everything I did for us, to keep a roof over our heads, to keep food on the table." "For the family?" My laugh came out bitter, almost strangled. I thrust the contract forward, the pages trembling. This isn't family. This is theft. You didn't just steal my name. You stole my life. She winced, but defiance sparked in her eyes. I had no choice. Emma knew that. She understood. I almost choked on the laugh that came next. Emma understood? She sold me out to Julian because you pushed her into it. She was so desperate to keep you afloat that she became your accomplice. You used her. You used me. You turned us both into pawns so you could keep gambling. Her hands shook as she reached for me. Don't say it like that. I was trying to survive. I stepped back, keeping the space between us. My voice hardened, slicing through the air. No, you were trying to gamble your way out of problems you made. I was a teenager when you started signing my name, wasn't I? Credit cards, contracts, I didn't even know. I was a kid. Her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you. You should have been protecting me, I said, my voice quivering but loud. Instead, you betrayed me. You betrayed Emma. You betrayed everything family was supposed to mean. The room went still. The hum of the refrigerator seemed louder, the clock ticking like it was keeping score. For once, I let the silence hang. I didn't rush to fill it. I wanted her to sit in it. I took a shaky breath and let the words pour out, each one heavier than the last. Emma lied. Julian exploited. But it all started with you. Every signature, every fake deal, it all traces back to you. You broke us, Mom, and you called it love. She whispered again, voice small. I did it for the family. I shook my head, my tears finally spilling. Stop saying that. You did it for yourself, and I paid the price. She collapsed onto the couch, her body folding in on itself, but I couldn't let myself soften. Not this time. I steadied my breath and straightened my shoulders. I'm done begging for your love. I'm done trying to earn what you never intended to give. Emma betrayed me. Julian betrayed me. And you... My voice cracked, but I pushed through. You betrayed me most of all, but I'm done carrying it. I'm done being your safety net. Her mouth opened, but I lifted my hand sharply. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't forge another piece of my life into your mess. I'm cutting the cord. The words burned my tongue, but as they left my mouth, I felt lighter, like chains snapping free. I turned toward the door, the weight shifting from unbearable to strangely clean. My chest still hurt. God, it hurt. But beneath the pain was something fierce. Freedom. At the threshold, I looked back once. She sat hunched, small and pale against the clutter of the living room. The faded family photos seemed to watch us both, like ghosts frozen in a lie. I lifted my chin, my back straight. For the first time in years, I felt tall. Outside, the night air wrapped around me, heavy with the scent of magnolia and rain-soaked earth. The stars blinked above Savannah, distant but steady, cutting through the haze of streetlights. Each breath I took felt sharper, clearer, as if the world itself had shifted. Pain lingered like a bruise deep inside me, tender but no longer controlling me. I had my art, I had my allies, and I had myself. That was enough. Walking away from the house, my voice cracked but held steady as I whispered to the night, "Can I rebuild without them?" I didn't know the answer yet, but for the first time I was ready to find out. Comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from family? Subscribe for more stories. The night of my independent exhibition in New Orleans buzzed with an energy that felt electric, almost unreal. The art bar, once just a dim space with graffiti-splashed walls, had been transformed with soft, golden lights that bounced off canvases and glassware, filling the room with warmth. Outside, Bourbon Street roared with music and shouts, but inside, the air carried a gentler hum, jazz chords threading between clinking glasses, hushed voices, and bursts of laughter. The smell of varnish mixed with wine and the faint sweetness of jasmine candles Mia had insisted on placing near the entrance. I breathed it in, my chest expanding with something I hadn't felt in years: belonging. Every wall was lined with my paintings, arranged carefully with the help of Mia and the artists who had become my family. They stood proudly nearby, watching the crowd lean closer, whisper, point, and snap photos. For the first time, the people weren't here for Emma's name or Julian's money. They were here for me, for what I had created. My hands were clammy, my pulse quick. But it wasn't fear this time. It was the thrill of being seen. And when the first painting sold, A red dot sticker pressed onto its corner. I felt a jolt of recognition. My art had value because it was mine, untainted, unforced. Not because someone forged my name or claimed my voice, but because it carried my truth. At the center of it all stood the reborn Betrayal piece. The original had screamed with anger, all jagged crimson strokes that bled into each other like open wounds. But this one was different. I had spent weeks with it, layering colors over that raw red, jasmine purples, soft greens, and tender whites, like the blooms that hung heavy in Savannah's night air the evening I walked away from Mom's house. Those hues now floated across the canvas, not covering the wounds but transforming them, letting light seep through cracks of scarlet. Pain remained in its foundation, but above it blossomed something fragile, something alive. I overheard a woman standing before it whisper, "It looks like the moment pain starts to heal." Her voice trembled, and I saw her squeeze the hand of the man beside her. My throat tightened, because that was exactly what I had wanted. This painting wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about rewriting its meaning. From across the room, Mia caught my eye. She lifted her glass high, her grin wide and fierce. "You did it," she mouthed, her eyes shining. I smiled back, my chest too full for words. When it came time to speak, I walked up to the small mic by the stage. My palms slicked against the stand, but my voice, though shaky at first, grew steady. "Thank you," I began, my gaze sweeping over the sea of faces, "for being here, for believing, for listening to the story behind the colors." I paused, inhaling the jasmine-scented air, and continued. "Art gave me a way to survive betrayal. Tonight I wanted to give someone else a chance too." I gestured toward a sign by the bar, the announcement of a new fund. "I'm starting a grant for young artists who've been silenced or overlooked, and I'm naming it after my sister Emma." A ripple moved through the crowd, some eyebrows raised, some mouths softened into understanding smiles. Emma's name hung in the air, no longer chained to betrayal but reclaimed, reshaped. "She was part of my story," I added, my voice firm. "Good and bad, and this way her name carries something that builds instead of destroys." Applause rose, first scattered, then strong, steady, washing over me like a tide lifting me higher. For the first time I felt the sound not as noise, but as affirmation. As the night wound down, after the last painting had been claimed and the final glasses clinked, I slipped backstage. My body ached from smiling, from shaking hands, from standing tall for hours. Yet something inside me loosened, like a knot finally untangled. I felt taller, surer, rooted not in blood ties but in chosen ones, in the community that had carried me when family tried to break me. On a small table beside my easel, I noticed an envelope. My name was scrawled across it in Mom's familiar handwriting, slanted, hurried, uneven. My chest tightened instantly. For a long moment, I just stared at it, my fingers hovering above the paper, my breath shallow. Finally, I tore it open. The letter was short, almost frantic. Apologies scattered across uneven lines, excuses woven through them like frayed thread. I skimmed, my stomach tightening until my eyes caught on the final line. "There's more about Emma you don't know." The words snagged like barbed wire. My hands trembled as I folded the letter shut. I looked back at the jasmine-streaked painting glowing under the fairy lights, its colors alive with both hurt and healing. My chest ached with the weight of bruises that hadn't faded, with the shadows of secrets that refused to die. I slipped the letter into my bag. Tonight wasn't the night for more ghosts. Tonight was about strength, about standing in a room that pulsed with life and knowing I had turned betrayal into beauty. Still, unease curled beneath the applause, a whisper that refused to quiet. Stepping back into the crowd, I greeted another guest with a steady smile, my voice clear. Inside, though, my thoughts hummed. I've turned their betrayal into my power. But what else is hiding in the dark? And as the night thinned, jazz notes weaving with laughter, one question followed me home, soft but insistent. What's Mom still hiding? Savannah's airport carried the kind of restless hum that never stopped, rolling wheels of suitcases clattering on polished tiles, muffled announcements about delayed flights, the hiss of espresso machines from a coffee stand nearby. I stood by the boarding gate, my ticket folded tightly in my hand. New York, my first solo exhibition there. A year ago, the idea would have felt impossible, a dream too fragile to touch. Now it was a reality, and the weight of it pressed against my chest with equal parts fear and exhilaration. The air smelled of roasted beans and jet fuel, that strange mix of warmth and departure. Families clustered in corners, hugging, laughing, crying. A little boy clung to his father's pant leg, refusing to let go. A woman wiped at her cheeks after a long embrace. I watched them. My heart tugged in two directions, toward the ache of what I had lost and the strength of what I had built. Through the wide glass windows, I could see planes gliding along the runway, their silver bodies catching the sun, their engines roaring like declarations. You can begin again. I pressed my palm against the glass, the surface cool beneath my skin, my reflection ghosting back at me. A year ago, I had walked away from the house that was supposed to be home. Tonight, I was walking towards something entirely mine. The loudspeaker crackled, calling another boarding group. My heartbeat quickened and memory pulled me backward, unspooling like a film reel. I saw Emma and me as children, sitting beneath the sprawling oak tree in our backyard, our knees scraped with dirt, cheap watercolor sets scattered between us. We painted on whatever paper we could find, old receipts, the backs of school worksheets. Emma's laugh bubbled as the wind carried our smeared creations into the grass. Her fingers were always stained with paint, her eyes alive with mischief. In that memory, betrayal hadn't yet existed. Only color, only possibility. The flash of it hurt, sharp and soft at the same time. That memory smelled of grass warmed by the sun and faint, chalky paint water. It was the one I never wanted to lose, even though it came wrapped in grief. Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever forgive Mom? The question pressed down on me, heavier than the carry-on slung over my shoulder. I thought of Mom's letter, the uneven handwriting that still lived in the bottom of my bag, the line that wouldn't leave me. There's more about Emma you don't know. The words pulsed like a bruise that refused to fade, a riddle without an answer. I hadn't opened that door yet. Maybe one day, but not today. When I lifted my gaze back to the terminal, I saw what I had chosen instead. Mia, who had thrown her arm around me the night of the exhibition and whispered, "You're not alone." Clara, whose sharp pen had cut through Julian's lies and lit the truth for others to see. The artists who had turned into family, their laughter as steady as any bloodline could have been. These were the ones who lifted me when the people closest to me had broken me down. I slid my hand into my bag and touched the edge of my sketchbook. The first page held the small recreation of the Betrayal painting. It wasn't for sale, not for anyone's eyes, but mine. The red strokes still slashed across the page, but over them I had laid down soft jasmine purples and greens, hues that reminded me of the night air in Savannah after rain. The painting had stopped being just about betrayal. It had become about survival, about transformation, proof that I had chosen myself when no one else had. Another boarding call echoed through the speakers. People stood, gathering coats, adjusting backpacks, giving last goodbyes that looked like anchors being cut loose. I hesitated, watching a mother smooth her daughter's hair, a couple pressing their foreheads together before parting. My chest tightened, but not with longing, not anymore. Betrayal had broken me once, yes, but it had also forced me to rebuild, to pick every brick of my life with intention. And maybe that was the truest lesson. Your worth isn't carved by those who betray you. It's defined by the ones who see your value when you can't even see it yourself. Walking down the jet bridge, the hum of engines grew louder, vibrating through the metal floor. Each step carried with it another memory I allowed to pass through me, the sting of Mom's lies, the collapse of Emma's scheme, the stranger's shadow, the night I walked out of that house with only my name. I let them come, and then I let them go, breathing each one out like smoke. Settling into my seat by the window, I buckled in and looked out. Savannah stretched below, patchworks of light and shadow, fading as the plane pushed toward the runway. My breath fogged the glass faintly as I whispered to myself, steady and unflinching, "I'm stronger now, but the scars remain." The plane surged forward, engines thundering, wheels lifting from the earth. My stomach dipped, the kind of dip that felt like freedom. The horizon stretched open, streaked in orange and violet like brushstrokes across a canvas. Somewhere between the clouds and the city waiting ahead, I felt it settle deep in me. The weight of choice, not pulling me down but rooting me into who I had become. Maybe one day I'd face Emma again. Maybe I'd unfold Mom's letter and uncover what else she had hidden. But not today. Today belonged to art, to flight, to the family I chose, and the world I was ready to claim. As the plane climbed higher, I turned back, not to the window this time, but to you. My voice carried through the hum of the cabin, intimate, steady. Who betrayed you and who lifted you up? Subscribe for more stories of overcoming betrayal. And tell me in the comments, who's been your rock after a betrayal? Share this so others remember they're not alone.